Hello all. It's a rainy Sunday, but it's good. Kind of relaxing. Anyway, as usual, I hope you're all well and taking care of each other. And, I sort of miss standing up and walking around and annoying everybody, but this is it until things change. So, we're coming down to the end of the semester. A couple of things to note. I want to continue with definition today. What I'm going to do in the next video is I'm going to outline an assignment that I think we should all do. Although I will give people, I'm not sure how I'm going to work this, but I'm pretty sure everyone's going to get the same assignment for this last essay. We'll talk about it first. Then the next video will be explanatory. Not to worry. I think this might make things easier, so you don't have to think about what to do. You just you know what to do. Figure out how you're going to present it. And I'm going to try to include this whole situation that we're in, so it's something that we all have in common. So, and it will include obviously a little bit of definition. It'll also allow you to talk about, using your powers of rhetoric, description, comparison, and certainly narration and argument. So all of those things can be played into this last one. And again, I'll find out what the particulars are for finals. This particular video that I do for you guys goes to two different universities. So I know one university is going to have finals, certain finals day scheduled for us, where we'll all be doing this at the same time. The other university, I don't know yet, so I don't want to say anything in this video and misguide anybody. In any event, just to get back to definition, sort of finish this up a little bit anyway, there are two articles I'd like to just talk about real quickly. Not they're not amazingly long articles at all. The first one, real quick, is one of the things to do with this kind of rhetoric is to sort of assign abstract terms. Now, in the beginning of the semester, we talked about abstract and concrete language. Abstract language is the language that is sort of about concepts and ideas. Concrete language, that's abstract language. Concrete language is things you can deal with your senses. You can taste, feel, touch, smell, that whole thing. So, as I pointed out earlier on in the semester, your thesis is going to be abstract, an idea. Remember, we talked about cigarette smoking is hazardous to your health as an idea, and the concrete support for that, or proof of that, is in the essay, the body of the essay. And this is the way it goes for all the essays that we have been looking at and all the ones that we have been writing. When we get to this part, this definition part, again, I'm not going to ask you to define a pen, and it makes no sense. Or, but something, a pair of glasses, or, a computer. So this ideas here that need to be. So I read everybody who contributed to the flirting discussion board topic. There's another one on there, by the way, you should be writing about. But the flirting one was interesting. It pretty much goes the way I expect it to. Some people take a word like that, and their instinct is to describe it or to define it as if they're talking to somebody who already knows what it means, and you're just sort of putting a little spin on it or a little extra, or you're just giving it a definition to sort of prove that you know. Not consciously, just that's what it feels like. But the assignment was to write it for someone who is clueless about what flirting was, and of course that makes it more challenging. So how do you do that? And I responded to everybody who sent me something, and it was pretty much a matter of, this is fine, with lots of good examples, not lots, but good examples and explanation. And some of you just needed to add examples. That's really all it was. Some people would say things like, romantic expressions and, body language. I have no idea what that means. Some of you put down things that I even mentioned what might be even questionable in 2020. touching someone in an affectionate way, hugging someone somebody wrote, or even a kiss, which is, back in my day that was fine, but now it's questionable at best in the hashtag Me Too and this very litigious society that we live in. So again, it's weird to how do we, and then culturally it's different too. So that kind of concept, the essay that is in your text, the one of the ones I just gave you the other day comes from a book called Slouching Towards Bethlehem, a really wonderful book. I think this comes out backwards on there, doesn't it? Oh well. Anyway, it's by Joan Didion, and it is the article that is the link is up there on the opening page of Blackboard and Moodle, called On Self-Respect. And again, as I was beginning to say, one of the things about definition, teachers love to throw abstract terms at you. Define education, define respect, define sadness, define, loneliness or whatever, some, gratitude, things that are abstract. What kind of concrete suggestions can you give for this? One of the things I do in class sometimes is define trust. How do you define trust to someone? I think we did this in class, without using another abstract word. So the best thing to do for something like trust is to give an example of trust. Well, trust is, here, you can babysit my children, you can borrow my new car, whatever. Those are examples of trust, and so we get the idea because of those concrete things. Her essay takes a little work. It's very short, but she's challenging you to look up words and pay attention to her similes and metaphors and her figurative language. But basically, she's not a big fan of this thing called self-respect. She thinks it's more sort of a selfish thing that we do for ourselves as opposed to for other people. She says it's got nothing to do with the face of things, but concerns a separate peace, a private reconciliation. The willingness to accept responsibility for one's own life is the source from which self-respect springs. She also uses other abstract words like character. People with self-respect, I'm quoting, exhibit a certain toughness, a kind of moral nerve. They display what they once called character. And so it's a tough one, because sometimes we think of self-respect as somebody who is always admirable, and that's what having character means. She's trying to point out that it doesn't always mean that it means that even someone who is not a particularly likable person can have character. It's just not the character that you approve of, or can certainly have self-respect and still do and say things that you disapprove of. So she's qualifying this thing called self-respect. It's not something that everybody should have because it'll be the same thing and we'll all be so likable. It's qualifying it, which is another way of dealing with definition. Let me redefine this, like the redefining flirting, which, how do you, redefining flirting for the 21st century? Certainly it's different to do flirting in a lot of ways today than it was back in 1955 or 1855 or whatever, because of what's allowable, for what's considered correct and, politically correct and all of that kind of thing. So you want to just be careful of all of those things. It's an interesting essay. It's worth your time. I mean, sometimes we have to challenge ourselves. She says people with self-respect are willing to invest themselves in something. They may not play at all, but when they do play, they'll know the odds. And then she says to have this sense of one's intrinsic worth, which constitutes self-respect, is the ability to discriminate and to love and to remain indifferent. Somehow that seems to be an odd thing, not quite intuitive with self-respect, but there it is. Anyway, I think it's worth your time, and it'll give you an idea of sort of a serious piece of intellectual writing that deals with this issue. So the very thing that we do in our classroom. Now, the other essay that's from your textbook, called Pride. This one is a really good a really good essay, I think. Very nicely put. It borders on poetry in some way, especially toward the end. If you have it in front of you, it's fun to go through, but what he does here is he decides to take this whole notion of pride. And first of all, keep in mind that when I say pride, if I were to assign you this, if I had assigned this to you, some of you would have written the negative aspect of pride. Having too much pride, being too proud of yourself. Hubris, it was called in ancient Greece. That is when you think you think you're better than everyone, and nothing can touch you. And there were countless plays and stories from ancient times about people who were big and they fell because of hubris, of their pride. Pride here is not. You can be proud. It's good to be proud of yourself sometimes. Everyone encourages that. You should be proud of yourself. You did a great job here. You won the game. You won the race. You got an A. Whatever it is, you should be. There are things to be. You don't want necessarily to speak it. Sometimes you feel you're being too egotistical or conceited, but it's okay to feel proud of yourself. You did well. Why not be a little proud? In this case, he decides to be very specific. He uses description and describes a little town in El Paso, Texas. And basically, the whole essay is virtually all description, except for 2 or 3 little breaks where he reminds us that he's talking about pride. And long story short, the essay is about a little town in El Paso. It starts off with a little truck stop, like a 7-Eleven type place on the side of the road where the manager is cleaning the window and some kid comes in and buys a big gulp or a Slurpee and a woman drives up, and it's all very friendly. He knows the kids. He asks her about something. She asks him about something. They're all they know each other's names. Later on, we get a father who goes to a game, watches kid play some game, and I think goes to a graduation ceremony. And so these people who, according to the essay, are poor, and yet they are still proud of the jobs that they do, the neighbors that they have and that they are, and the families that they are raising. The first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs are all just describing that gas station on the road truck stop I mentioned. Paragraph 6, he says pride. He stops and it reminds us he's talking about pride. Pride is work at a job like it's as important as art or war. And he goes on. Then he stops. He goes back to describing. Describes a son getting dressed and goes to the basketball game and all that stuff. And then on paragraph 8, he goes back to pride. Pride. And he describes pride. So he takes this position of describing it first and then letting you in on what he's doing. The last paragraph, I won't read it because you can do it yourself, but you should know, last paragraph is really nice. It's paragraph 10. If you've got it in front of you, look at it. It is virtually one sentence, one huge sentence. It starts with seeing the beauty, look out there from the height of the mountain. It goes all the way down to about 3 lines up from the bottom, and that's where it stops. The ones who will be born from them, it stops. Just take a look at that sentence, read it out loud. It's worth it. It's a list of all the things that this little town has done. People have died in war, and they've built this and gotten married and had children, and all kinds of things happened to them, good and bad, but they are a proud people. Finally, the last part reads like a poem. The desert land is rock dry and ungreen. It is brown. Brown like the skin is brown. Beautiful brown. And so it does go back to, again, a proud people for how they live and They're not ashamed of the fact that they're not living in some fancy mansion in Beverly Hills, driving fancy cars. They do very well with what they have. It's a strategy, but the first thing you have to have is the idea. So this notion of self-respect. Now, some of you who come from other countries and other cultures may have another whole other idea about what self-respect means, and it may be quite different from what is considered self-respect in the States, which could make an interesting essay, as that's a using comparison, for instance. As far as pride goes, it's just a thought. What do you think of pride? What are your ideas about pride? Is it always? It's not always a good thing, and you know, when is it okay? When does good pride become negative pride? And all of that, all of these ideas that, you know, these words that we use every day, you know, they have a deeper root to them. The other thing that came up with earlier with on being a man, I talked about that one already, and I want a wife. Again, I have a discussion board prompt up there about simply asking, what is your idea? What do you think of? How do you define gender? It's because as I say in the prompt, I was going to say, you know, what is the meaning of male and female, husband and wife? But I think that's an old question now. I think the real question is, you know, with all the whole LGBT community and with idea of masculine, feminine, boy, girl, husband, wife is so blurry to really make it. I pull back, and I'm saying, let's just talk. What do we make of this thing called gender now? Some of you will answer simply, it's just the way you're built, I'm sure. Others of you won't be so sure. Some of you will be sure it's not. So might be really interesting for all of you to read each other's answers, actually, and comment on each other's answers. I'd like you to do that as well. So please get to this. The next essay, the next video was going to be about your assignment for the final essay. And in the meantime, let's just get practice with this whole notion of explaining something that is abstract to a reader, this whole idea, which is what every essay does anyway. We're just specifying it, we're calling it definition. Okay, folks, I think that's all I have to say. I'll talk more in the next video for sure. Okay, hope the weather gets nicer. Take care of each other, take care of yourself, and I hope to see you all soon enough in the fall. Wow, how's that going to be? Anyway, peace, kids.